Do you want to become a talk show host? Do you have a great idea? Passionate World Talk Radio is currently looking for podcast hosts for our Internet Talk radio station. Please email us at pwrnetworkllc@gmail.com with your name, email address, cell phone number, and podcast topic. In return, you will receive a 3-minute intro on air to a live audience about your podcast. Remember, just email us your name, email address, and your podcast topic, and in return, you will receive a free 3-minute intro on the air. How cool is that? Welcome to Passionate World Talk Radio. Educate, enlighten, entertain.
Hi, everybody. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy, a Passionate World Talk Radio network, where our mantra is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. The views of the guest may not represent those of the host or the station. Folks, you're going to want to listen to this podcast. I am excited. Yes, I get excited about every guest. That's true. Do you have a special needs child? Do you want to know how to do self-care, why it's important? Or even if you do not have a special needs child, are you a caregiver for someone else? Are you doing self-care? And why is it important? Well, I want you to listen to my guest today. My guest is Natalie Brobin, who is author of Everyday Self-Care and Your High Needs Child. Natalie has blogs in self-care on her website, www.everydayselfcare.com. And Natalie is an advocate for Turner syndrome. She has a degree in journalism, and I'm excited to hear what she has to say. I have a child with special needs. We have a lot in common. Welcome, Natalie, to Chatting with Betsy.
Thank you, Betsy, for that warm welcome. I'm glad to be here.
Well, thank you. Natalie, I had to ask you because I'm just so excited about your book. Why did you write the book, and what would you like the reader to take away? Because I know self-care is really important. Even if you were taking care of a child with special needs, you can't forget about yourself. So Go ahead. I'd like to hear you.
Well, a lot of things contributed to me writing this book, and one of them was the complete lack of self-care for years and years and years. And as you know, with a child with special needs, we put our own needs just at the bottom of the list. I had my daughter, her siblings, I had a husband, a house to run, I was a stay-at-home mom, and I never took care of myself. And I kind of had a day of reckoning when my dearest friend in the world died by suicide 6 years ago, and I had a nervous breakdown. And I truly believe that, because of my lack of self-care, and not just with my daughter, we always have other issues in our lives that cause us stress, but that I was kind of due for one because I didn't take care of myself. And, I just constantly had so much anxiety in my body. And when I started feeling better after doing a lot of therapy, a lot of different modalities, I really felt called to write a book about this. At first, I wanted to write a book just about Turner syndrome because that's what my daughter has. But then I realized that that there's enough information on but Google and everywhere on it. I don't need to write a book about it. But I realized the thing that I could help people with is what I'd learned as I'd recovered from my nervous breakdown. I recovered from years of lack of self-care, that I really wanted to share what I had learned. And that's kind of how the book came about. And I wrote it over about 3 years. I had a couple different editors work on it with me. So it's really well written. I'm very proud of it. I interviewed 30 moms who have children with special needs, and 2 doctors, a psychologist and a cardiologist. So I have a lot of other people's input to kind of back up what I have to say. It's just not my story. It's, everybody's story. And I hope it can help people. I wanted to help any parent, but those of us that have kids with physical, mental health conditions, or even things like addiction, we're in a place where if we don't step in and take care of our kids, they could die. And so that's why I wrote the book. But as I've been sharing it, so many people have said, this book is for any parent. And I realized, my other 2 had their moments of being the special need child, like when my son for 2.5 years was sick and we couldn't figure out what it was, and it turned out to be allergies. So really any parent could use it. And I write the book that the first 6 chapters are really kind of for anyone to read. The first chapter is breathe. Then I go find your quiet time. So I talk about prayer and meditation. Talk about staying in the present moment. I'm sure you can agree with this, how we just spend all our time future tripping and worrying.
Yes.
Being kind to yourself. We beat ourselves up, and we're doing the best we can, and we just beat ourselves up for no reason. And then just things like finding positive outlets for your stress, avoiding things like alcohol, because I did overindulge in alcohol, but I stopped drinking, and that helped. And then, just all the basics on taking care of your body, getting enough sleep, drinking water, all the things that they, in quotes, say to do, but we don't do. Get enough sleep, eat 3 square meals, eat your fruits and vegetables, not all the processed food. It's sometimes it's so simple that it's hard for us to follow it. So that's a long answer to why I wrote this book.
That's fine. I love what you said, Natalie. I mean, I'm just sitting here with like chills, and it's 90-something degrees in New Jersey because you just gave me like a goosebumps. It's so true what you said. Mental health, and I can't say this enough, I'm also a mental health advocate. When you're a caregiver, whether it's to your child, your spouse, your parent, or whoever it is, you need to take care of yourself, the caregiver, and you need to go for therapy, counseling, and do it. There's it's nothing to be ashamed of. We have to stop the stigma. And you're right. We have to take care of ourselves. And I put myself last all the time. Yep. And I went to counseling when I was on the verge of a nervous breakdown, taking care of my husband. He was mid-stage with Alzheimer's. And don't we, Natalie, think as women, we have to put on our cape and take it on the chin?
Oh, exactly. It's such I've noticed, and there's got to be, there's men out there that are caregivers, but the majority of them are women. And I don't know if it's just in our DNA that we care more, or that we're just predisposed. But yeah, it's a lot of women. And I liked what you said about getting counseling, because that's actually not my number one piece of advice, is to go to counseling. And I actually say that for anything that anyone is ever going through, because
me too.
Yeah, and when you're so stressed, and you get to a point where you're telling people how stressed you are and how, blah, 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 whatever it is, it's like, okay, you need to slow down, take some deep breaths, and you need to talk about it. And I think it's getting better and better in our society, with the Olympics and the gymnasts and everything. Mental health is becoming a bigger and bigger deal, and people are okay talking about it, but it can still get better, because, I don't know, people are still shy away from it. I've been on an antidepressant 25 years, and I don't care who knows. It helps me.
Yes. I encourage people. I run a support group on Facebook for caregivers, or those who want to know about dementia, #Kick Alzheimer's Ass Movement. And I tell people, and I even told people when I used to do podcasts by myself, it's nothing to be ashamed of. If you need to take antidepressants to help you through a hump, then take it. If you need to go for counseling, then go. And, Natalie, it amazes me that people aren't aware of their local resources, that there is help out there.
right? And there's a national called NAMI, the National National Association of Mental Alliance. Is that what NAMI stands for? I can't remember, but I mean, NAMI's, everybody's got a local NAMI thing in their city. And, yeah, there's a lot of resources. Obviously, you go to your insurance company first and see who they cover. That's always your best bet.
And can you tell the audience a little bit about Turner syndrome? Because that's not really well known.
Yeah, in fact, I'm just going to read a definition that the Turner Syndrome Society of the United States has. They're at turnersyndrome.org. Turner syndrome is a non-inheritable, variable genetic disorder that occurs in every 2,000 female births. A few of the hallmarks of TS are short stature, infertility, heart defects, kidney problems, ear infections, nonverbal learning disorder, autoimmune disorders, and more. As with any syndrome, each girl and woman with Turner syndrome will have unique characteristics to them. So there's a combination of like learning issues and physical issues, major health issues. My daughter has the heart issues, so she's actually had 2 open heart surgeries, one close to birth and one just 5 years ago. And she also has an autoimmune disease that are more common in syndromes. And for those that don't know, syndrome just means a collection of diagnoses. A lot of people shy away from that word, but it just means a collection of diagnoses. And so she also has Crohn's disease now, and so that's one of her health issues. But we were fortunate she didn't have the learning issues, and she didn't have the social issues with friends. I wrote a blog about, early on I worried about all that, how she was not going to do well in school, and because I'd heard about it, and then she ended up, getting all A's, teaching herself math on her own, and she's actually just finished her first year of medical school. So she is quite amazing. Yeah.
That's
I
great.
tears because I can hardly ever say that without crying because I'm just so proud of her. But there's also social issues, and there's something called a nonverbal learning disorder, which is a lot like Asperger's. And I remember one time in high school when she said, I'm just having a couple friends over, and we got home afterwards, her dad and I, and the front foyer was just covered in 30 pairs of shoes, and I was like, oh, yay, she has friends. And so that was just really, really made me happy. And she has taught me about determination. She's never let anything stop her. When she couldn't do one thing, she'd say, okay, like when she couldn't do sports anymore because of her heart, she was like, okay, I'm going to do this. She did a leadership thing and got to the top of this leadership organization. So she just never, and when she applied to med school, she didn't get in the first time. She's like, I'm going to apply again. I'm not going to let it stop me. And she's pretty determined, and I'm pretty proud of her. So, but that's what Turner syndrome means to our family. It's more about the heart stuff.
Well, that is a wonderful accomplishment, and I would be very proud also. That must have, that takes a lot of determination to get into medical school. That's fantastic. Go ahead. Sorry. No, go ahead.
No, I just had a lot of sacrifice. Go ahead. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
I wanted to know, for the audience to know, did you suspect something was amiss with your daughter, and did you have trouble getting the doctors to listen to you, or did they tell you that there was a problem?
Oh, no, I sure did. Now, initially she had open heart surgery. So that was, as soon as she was born, the next day they rushed her to another hospital. So she had open heart surgery. But as she got older, she wasn't growing, and which is a hallmark of Turner syndrome, is slow growth, height and weight. And she had couple different sets of tubes, and one doctor would say, oh, it's her ear infections, and I'd be like, no, it's not her ear infections. And then she was going to the cardiologist more regularly because she wasn't growing, and he didn't know why. He thought it might be her heart. So other people were like, it's her heart, and I'd be like, no, it's not her heart. And every doctor pointed to a different specialty, and I was the only one that was looking over everything. And finally the cardiologist said, she hasn't grown in a year. And I said, I know. What are we going to do next? And so that's when he sent me to the endocrinologist, and they did what's called a karyotype, which is they map out your genetic code. And they came back with the diagnosis of Turner syndrome. And I remember going, yes, I was right. There's something wrong. And then I was flooded with hundreds and hundreds of questions after that. But, you know, I have never doubted my mother's intuition since that day. I knew there was something more wrong with her. And I've had even with her heart stuff, the first cardiologist misdiagnosed the severity of her heart. We had to get a second opinion, and by the time she had heart surgery, she was close to heart failure. So I have learned to do my own research and do my own work. And so all those years of her with the different medicines and the different diagnoses, I looked up everything. I talked to every doctor I could. I knew the clinical practice guidelines forwards and backwards, and I knew the doctors that I needed to talk to, especially about her heart stuff. And you're a mama bear when you have a sick kid, especially when no one will says there's nothing wrong. You know, they look at you, dismiss you as the mom, you know. Us
yes. Yes. Oh, my goodness. Natalie, I just love what you're saying. Like, we're on the same wavelength. I consider myself a mama bear. Also very protective. And I encountered the doctors didn't believe me about Josh. You know, I'm an overprotective mother. I'm doing everything for Josh, or Josh was lazy. It's all in my head. And, you know, there was a problem. And It's not that, you know, I don't love him. Of course I love him. So that's why I wanted to know what the problem was so we can move forward with it. And you're right about the mother's intuition. I tell people all the time, you have to go with your gut. You have to go with your intuition, your instincts, whether it's your child or your spouse or your parent. You know your loved one better than anybody, and to go for other opinions if you don't agree with the first one, and question the doctor and be an advocate and do your own research. Oh, my goodness, I love you, Natalie. I love what you have to say. It's true. It's so true. And, you know, yes, go ahead. I get excited. Go ahead.
I have a chapter on mother's intuition, and I talk about those stories of, you know, the first doctor saying, oh, we'll see you in 3 months, and then I was worried and, you know, called the guy, and he said, oh, I'll talk to your family doctor. He wouldn't even talk to me one-on-one. And then I got the second opinion. The guy's like, she needs surgery and she needs it this week. And he actually called me the next day to see how she had gone through the night. And then I remember we weren't going to the hospital until the next day, and I sat up with her in my arms the whole night. I mean, the second cardiologist never doubted me. He knew that I knew my daughter better than anyone.
And I'm sure you did, as well as many parents and many caregivers, the frustration that we have when a doctor does not listen. I mean, what does it take for them to listen? And forget if you're a woman. I mean, they don't even want to listen to you. And then I can't even get into, if you're a minority and a woman, that's a double whammy. And that's been proven. And it's really sad. Doctors need to listen to women. They need to listen. Doctors need to listen to caregivers and social workers. They just do, and we need to be advocates. And you are a tremendous advocate, Natalie. And I want to encourage the audience to get your book and to go on your website to read your blogs. Matter of fact, I'm going to have to start reading your blogs because I would like to read them myself.
Well,
because
and my
you get
website,
informed. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
It's everydayselfcare.com, and there's a dash between self and care. So it's everydayself-care.com. That's my website. And I think you might have said the name of the book at the beginning, but it's Everyday Self-Care and Your High Needs Child by Natalie Marie Brobin. But yeah, I mean, I tried to interview all these other parents so that it wasn't just, my advice. And the last 3 or 4 chapters, like dealing with unhelpful comments. Haven't you had a few of those unhelpful comments? Like,
oh yeah.
Either that.
Oh yeah.
Another chapter is on how you can tell you need self-care. I mean, there were times that I totally needed self-care, and I just ignored the signs. I was literally breaking down and getting angry at my family over nothing. There's another question I asked them, and it was, what surprised you about yourself? And then, of course, I, asked what they might do differently, and then advice they have for new parents going through the same thing. So I tried to really, I talked a lot about self-care and the things you can do that way, but then also, talked to some parents, and then we talked about the things that made us laugh, because there is some laughter in some of this, and I'm sure you've experienced some. For me,
yes.
After my daughter's second open heart surgery, she was older, so she was almost 21, and someone had said, when you go home, have her sleep in the lazy boy in the living room, and you can sleep in there with her, but she'll be more comfortable in the lazy boy. So I slept on a mattress on the floor, and so I was going to help her go to the bathroom, get her water. Well, then I took my sleeping pill, so I slept through the night. She got up all by herself, and then I snored so loud I kept her awake. And we just laughed about that. So the next night she spent the night in her own bed.
Yes, humor. I tell people all the time, you got to have a sense of humor to be, a caregiver of whoever you're a caregiver for, what your situation is. You have to.
I remember one time when she was like 9, I think was when she had one of her first MRIs of her heart, and we didn't know we left a Dr. Seuss book there. And then when she had another one like 2 years later, it was just sitting there in the waiting room with her name inside it. So it was kind of fun. I'm like, look, your book's waiting for you.
Did you ever feel, Natalie, that you didn't enjoy your daughter as much because you wanted to try to do things to make her better, that you would think that would solve the problem? I know I had that in my Joshua's younger years. I have to constantly work with him so I thought he could snap out of it. I thought, I could improve him, fix him. And then I realized that I can't. Did you encounter that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to say that I enjoyed her the whole time, but the reality is when you have a child that's sick, you're just trying to make them healthy, I mean, and then when she'd do something really cool, like when she participated in sports, I mean, I would cry. I'd be so proud of her. It wasn't like a normal parent reaction. Just break down.
I understand.
So
no,
happy. But
yes.
I think as she got older and her health issues kind of narrowed down to the heart stuff, it became easier and easier to enjoy her success, and to enjoy her. Because she, even as a little girl, she had the funniest little personality. She just really did. And, and as she got older, she's just a very mature young woman. And I think that has to do with going through all the health issues. One of her elementary school friends said, Nicole's an old soul. And I believe that. She always, and she could always talk to elderly people really well. I tell her she needs to go into geriatrics for medical school, but she hasn't decided yet. But yeah, there were times that the worry was so strong that I couldn't enjoy her. And that's hard. I think you have to work as a parent of a child with health issues to stay in the present moment and not future trip. I mean, what I did is I just worried about all the things that I'd heard could happen to her, and not everything did. But, you know, you worry and you miss out in the here and now. You know, I'm watching her play softball, and I'm nervous about the softball hitting her in the chest, and I'm not enjoying watching her out in the field having fun with her friends. You know, I'm just worried. So I did some of that. And, you know, I don't know if I could go back and change that. I just know I tried as hard as I could to enjoy what I could.
Yes, that's true. And I feel that your book is so helpful to parents and other caregivers because you don't want people, just like I don't want people to make the same mistakes that I made. So you are giving them advice so that they don't have to go down the road that you went. And that's what, you know, I try to do with caregivers. You know, I say I'm not an expert. I'm just telling you my experience so that you don't make the same mistakes that I do. You know, learn from me. That's just basically it.
There's just so many little things that you do in your day, you know, like, you know, when I talk about breath work, I've done all kinds of yoga retreats, and I've taken yoga teacher training, and I've gone to the Buddhist center, and I've done breath work there. But the simplest thing that helps me is just to breathe in and out to a 6 count. And so back in the day, when I was waiting in the waiting room, I could have been doing some breath work because I would get anxious in the waiting room before the appointments. You know, I'm sure you know that. And, but, you know, and then when you're waiting in a car for the kids, you know, when you go to the bathroom, that was like my biggest escape when they were little. I had 3 little buggers, you know, and I should have just done some breath work in the bathroom and just centered myself. But I can't tell you how important breath work is. I mean, I do it to go to sleep. I do it when someone makes me mad in traffic. You know, it's just a constant. It helps me, you know, and just little things that you can do, but trying to do something every day for yourself. I know it's so hard to think of, but you know, and then enjoy the little things in life. You know, when you go on a walk, notice the trees, notice the pretty flowers, notice the green grass, you know, instead of in your head, you're like, okay, now the next thing I have to do is I got to go to the grocery store, I got to go blah, 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 you know, and those are things that are just really, really important that I talk about in my book.
That's so true. I 100% agree. I have a new appreciation for life. I mean, with Josh, I really realized not to take anything for granted, even buttoning a shirt. Do not take that for granted. With my husband going through his Alzheimer's, dying at 66, my brother died at 67. Life's too short, folks. Don't sweat the small stuff. Enjoy life and live each day to the fullest. And you're talking about breath work. It's funny that you said that in a way because, I mean, I'm 63 years old. So now at 63 years old, my counselor's telling me about this breathing meditation exercise of not just deep breathing, but naming your what you're anxious about, your feeling, and then do the exercise of deep breaths. Like sometimes that's breathing in for 7, breathing out 11, until you bring your stress level down. And that has helped me. And I wished I knew about that in my caregiving days, to face that feeling that you have, you know, name it and recognize it. Excuse me.
Yeah.
And that has helped me. I want to thank you, Natalie. Oh, go ahead. I want to thank you for coming on. Oh, you're welcome. I thank you so much for coming on. You are a wealth of information, role model, and thank you for writing your book, coming on my show, writing your blog, and helping others.
Thanks.
You're welcome. And I want to tell the audience. Oh, go ahead. Did you have something else?
We're all together, and I mean, my hope is, you know, I can help someone else, you know, with them reading this book, because I truly did it to help other people. I didn't do it to make all kinds of money, you know. I just did it because I really, really wanted to help people. So
I love that. And as I always say, what people might think as a tragedy, or when they do have a tragedy and we can't see, the light at the end of the tunnel, something beautiful usually happens out of it. I know that might sound crazy to some people, but it's true.
It is
true. There is light at the end of the tunnel. There are resources, and this is what my platform is about, is helping people. And I love when I have people like you on, Natalie, that are advocates, that are a resource for people, that want to help people. You could come back to my show anytime.
I
really
love
what you do.
Thank you.
And
thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome, and much success to you on your book. Where can people buy your book?
They can buy it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or basically any online bookstore.
Great. Okay. All right. Thank you, Natalie. Folks, thank you for listening. If you missed any of this podcast, you could hear it again on your favorite podcast outlet. It is free to subscribe to Chatting with Betsy. Just to name a few: Spreaker, Spotify, CastBox. You'll never know who I will have on. Share this podcast to help somebody else, because we all need help at some time in our life, and you don't know who you will be helping by giving this book as a gift. Do you know a friend who has a special needs child? Do you have a friend who's a caregiver? This book is not just for people with special or who have children with special needs, but this book is also for caregivers. I really believe that. And I really want to encourage you all to go on Natalie's website. It will be in the blog, so please read the blog that Jeannie White worked so hard on. And I want to thank Jeannie White, who's the station manager at Passionate World Talk Radio Network, who produces the show, writes the blog. And I want to thank Lillian Caldwell, CEO of Passionate World Talk Radio Network, who gives people a platform, a chance to be heard. And I want to thank you, the listeners, for downloading and subscribing to my show. Please rate my show. Hope you give it 5 stars. This show is for you, folks, and it's my way of paying forward. So I want to thank you for listening and subscribing. I appreciate it. Chatting with Betsy is going to be 2 years old next month. I can't believe it. And I want to wish everybody happy Labor Day. Can't believe it's next weekend, but it is coming up. And I just want to thank you, the listeners, for just supporting the show, and I appreciate all of you. And until we chat again, this is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio Network. Remember, folks, in a world where you can be anything, please be kind. Bye-bye now.
Do you want to become a talk show host? Do you have a great idea? Passionate World Talk Radio is currently looking for podcast hosts for our Internet Talk Radio station. Please email us at pwrnetworkllc@gmail.com with your name, email address, cell phone number, and podcast topic. In return, you will receive a 3-minute intro on air to a live audience about your podcast. Remember, just email us your name, email address, and your podcast topic, and in return, you will receive a free 3-minute intro on the air. How cool is that? Thank you for listening to Passionate World Talk Radio. You can listen to this program all over again by going over to https://passionateworldtalkradio.com. You can also hear it on Spotify, Spreaker, Amazon ALEXA, AMFM247.com every Tuesday evening between 8 and 9 p.m. YouTube, Facebook, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, and all the other podcast directories one can find on the internet.